Okay. It's 5:30 and I'm bringing the Community Development Authority to order. Do we need to do a roll call?
Sure. Wakely,
Here.
Cole,
Here.
Lori is absent, Sandoval, Crow,
Here.
and Chair Nelson is present.
Thank you.
Kari Oaks is still absent, but we will just continue to watch for her.
Okay, perfect. Next, we will go to approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any changes or questions, concerns about the last meeting's minutes? If not, we will consider them approved. Onto the agenda items. First one is a draft request for CDA event sponsorship support. And if I can have some assistance with this, that would be
Yes.
great.
So Scott Heacock, our new placemaking planner, listened to the discussion at the last meeting and tried to, I know that there were a couple suggestions for other grant application forms. There seemed to be a desire to keep it relatively simple, but standardize the process. And he used the Visit Middleton example as well as the Middleton Community Endowment to put together a draft request form. And he's included information about the CPA, some grant guidelines. He's suggesting a maximum grant amount of $2,000 based on the total annual budget of $7,500. He is suggesting that the grant request would be due January 31st. What we liked about having that as the deadline is it would give the city council time to approve the budget, which happens in November. And then immediately following that, the city staff would send an email out to everyone who's applied for a grant in the past. And that would give them a couple months time to put together their applications. And then we would have time to review them before the CDA meets for their January or their February meeting. And then if the CDA were not to approve the full $7,500 budget, there would still be an opportunity for other applications to roll in at that point. We would continue the practice that grant recipients would include the CDA logo on their promotional materials. If there are certain expenses that are required, and this is, kind of in the past, the CDA had matching fund requirements. And so the applicants who received the grants were obligated to submit receipts. So if that were the case, then they would have 45 days of the close of the event. We would review their receipts and then we would process their check. We would also ask for a one-page narrative describing the event and a proposed budget. Scott is willing to accept the applications. We kind of put together a form that they could fill out, information about the event history, a budget summary, and then that's the narrative portion. And Scott had some questions at the end of this that he thought might help him kind of edit and get more guidance from the CDA on what you want to see here. So the first question is, what should the maximum grant amount be?
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I thought the note about 2,000 seems to fit with the requests that we've discussed so far, at least in my time here, pretty well. So seems reasonable to me.
Anybody else? Thoughts on that?
I feel like we've had a couple recently that have come in that have been like 3,000, if I'm remembering correctly.
I believe the Mustard Museum request is 3,000.
Okay, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of. And I think this has probably been more relevant over the past couple years, but it's always tricky when you put a limit that isn't kind of tied to any kind of increase. And we can always change it next year or something like that. But I do agree with it's 1,000 probably. It's just when you set that hard number, it'd be kind of restraining in the future.
Does costs increase over time?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking back. I have a spreadsheet that I can share if you want to see the details. It looks like for the last few years at least, they've all been 2,000 or less. In 2021, the CDA allocated 5,000 to summer fun. That was kind of during the pandemic, but the actual amount spent was just over 3,000, so the full amount was not spent. I believe the CDA also allocated 4,000 for National Mustard Day in 2021, if that sounds right. 3,500 to stroll in. So I think the last year that we did more than 2,000 was probably in 2021, from what I can tell.
The overall budget decreased.
The overall budget has not
I
decreased.
think we have more events.
Yeah.
One thing that we did do is, hi Kari.
Hi.
We used to have a full $15,000 and it was split between an event sponsorship budget that did not require matching funds and then another 7,500 that was a matching support grant. And when the city opened the Stonehorse Green and hired a part-time, at that time it was part-time event person, we used the 7,500 event sponsorship towards that position, creating that position, because we thought, well, we're sponsoring events in a different way by like organizing them through this new position. And so that's when the budget went down to 7,500 when the Stonehorse Green opened. Yeah,
Where's the budget now?
it's 7,500 total, but I mean, that is flexible. I want to be clear, that's guided by the CDA. So in the budget process from last year, the CDA proposed 7,500 and keeping it the same. And that was approved by the Common Council. But if the CDA wanted to use more of its reserve funds toward an increase in the event sponsorship budget, you could do that. But I think that it would require a budget amendment. So you would have to make that as a recommendation, and then I would have our finance director prepare a budget resolution amendment, and that would go to the council for approval.
So all the events at Stonehorse, like the trivia nights they're doing and the movie nights and stuff, that all comes from that separate budget. That won't be asked.
Right, that is not part of the spreadsheet that Daphne shared with you for the 7,500. That is all primarily right now, we're using donated funds for that. Because when Stonehorse Green opened, we received 2 large donations. One was $25,000 for programming and another was 5,000. So most of the funds for like summer fun, trivia nights, and actually I would also say that I know at your last meeting, we said light the green. Here in the past, the CDA has granted funding for Light the Green, but I looked at how much we spent last year and it was only $275 for Light the Green. And that can also come out of those donated funds. So getting a little bit off of the grant application and looking at the budget amount, I think we have the National Mustard Day request, and then we have a request for stroll-in. Both of those are noticed on the agenda.
I'm sorry, could you go back to that chart again?
Yes,
Please, thank you.
and this should say 2,000 here. It's not been updated.
Okay. So far, we've approved 4. And we have 4 requested, but 2 other events
And actually, I apologize, this was from the packet last month, so this one has been approved.
Okay.
Pride, DMBA, 3,000
So,
between the
yeah.
two of those, plus 2,000 for Artwork. So we've,
So 5 approved,
5 of 7,500 has been approved.
and we have
Another,
Berlin Fall Fun
um,
to,
I think it's just Strollin and the National Mustard Day. Unless a new applicant came in.
okay.
Let me see if I can just log on to the Zoom from here and then I can share it. Dated.
And you're saying without a resolution, we can't, or we can dip into our reserves this year if we want to.
So with a resolution, you could increase your budget and go into the reserve fund.
Okay.
But you would need to make that as a recommendation and it would have to go to the council for approval. Since here, so that I can share here. Okay, so I had mentioned that these ones, we have already booked all of the bands using the donated funds. So this is all already scheduled and being paid for through that.
The ones in red.
The ones in red. So we have 2,000 requested from Strollin, which is on your agenda, and then we have 3,000 requested from the National Mustard Day.
So we have 5,000 requested, but we only have 2,000 in the budget.
We have 2,500 remaining in the budget, but 5,000 is being requested.
I should have looked this up before, but what is Stroll in Middleton? I'm not familiar with that.
It is an annual jazz event that's organized. It previously was organized by the Greater Madison Jazz Consortium, but they have joined forces with the Art and Literature Laboratory, and the Art and Lit Lab now organizes the Strollin event. It is typically one evening or one Saturday in early September, and it's jazz music throughout the downtown. So it's not just at the Stonehurst Green, but the Stonehurst Green is the main stage. And then they'll have music. Maybe they would partner with Louisiana's to offer music. They've had music at the public library, the senior center. I'm not sure if they've ever gone as far as Capitol Brewery stage. The Middleton High School jazz group used to perform at the BMO Harris, like plaza in front of BMO Harris. So I'm not sure like what all venues they have coordinated with this year, but there usually are like 5 different venues throughout the downtown, so you can walk around and check out the music.
I guess we're getting ahead of
Yes.
the agenda. We should go back to the grant.
Okay, so sticking to this idea of the,
Just make that bigger in case we go back to it.
yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. Okay. So have we left the agenda item of this draft, or
I think we got off track because we were talking about whether to limit things at $2,000.
yeah, Any other thoughts on the maximum on the draft? Jen saying no.
I almost wonder, do we really need to put a max? I feel like it would encourage, not that we have a ton of new applicants every year, but applicants to
Oh.
just set to that amount every time they apply, rather than kind of putting it at the amount.
Like
that
they
they
might have
need.
said 1,500, but they see that and they.
Yeah.
2,000.
But we usually see the same applicants year after year, so I don't know if that really matters that much.
That's a question I have about the draft. Do we want to limit how many times anyone can request? Isn't the tourism grant limited?
I believe that they limit support to 3 years, if I'm remembering correctly, because I know we aged out for the art walk. They weren't gonna
Yeah,
provide a
that's what
grant.
I was remembering. I was just wondering about that.
Do they have a rationale behind that as to why they would phase out? Just the event would become self-sustaining after?
And I'm actually not sure if that's in their application, but that is the guidance that I heard from the tourism director. I wonder if, just wanted to check and make sure that that wasn't formal. I mean, they definitely ask, is there an opportunity or willingness for multi-year contracting consecutively? I'm not seeing that as formal guidance in their application. I think that that is just must be their current practice.
Yeah.
And I don't know their reasoning behind it. I could ask Mari though. Tourism.
I'm not sure that I'd want to cap the number of years because I think some events like Pride and maybe the Art Walk or a similar art event like maybe would need support for several years, but still provide a lot of value to the community.
Fair enough. And it's not in here, so no big deal. Any thoughts? Oh, Kari, go ahead.
Hi, first of all, sorry I'm joining late. I was helping my mom out with something and underestimated the number of minutes it would take. When I thought I had 5 minutes left, I really had 10. But I am listening and thinking back to some advice that we got with placemaking when we were getting the whole Stone Horse Green thing going. And the advice was that you have to have events in order for something to really work. Like you have to show people how the space will be used. And I feel like all of these things that we're considering grants for are sort of part of the general placemaking of the downtown, which is sort of what the CDA is all about. And hearing Abby talk about maybe going back and looking for a budget amendment, I hate to have us be in such a tight spot where we're like shifting $500 here and there. And so like going forward, I think that's a great idea. I agree with the idea of not putting in a budget cap because people will index toward that likely. And I agree with the idea of not necessarily capping recurring asks because that's part of what placemaking is, that people look forward to a given event at a given time of year. So, yeah.
Good, I love that.
And I do just want to say in general, I love these forms. Scott put them together.
Yeah.
I think they're great. I love that we're standardizing this process and making it consistent so that, it isn't, are we giving, special treatment to whoever applies first and all of that. It makes it consistent, fair. So I love that we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we get everybody's requests by January 31st, those will be real requests. It's not us giving just what, little left we have in the budget.
And helpful to know those details too about the success of the.
The
Yeah,
other data,
yeah, I like that.
even if it's something simple.
Do we need to take any action on this?
No, do you want to go through any of the other questions just so he can make some edits and bring it back? Oh, Jen Cole has her hand raised.
Yeah, please go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I hear Carrie's point about the cap and folks budgeting towards that. I think, I can only speak from the Pride event's perspective, but I don't know that we would. We knew we could request more, but we know right now we don't need to. Um, my reluctance to have it open, no cap, um, would be, it's based in another grant making organization that I am associated with, and we do cap ours because what we don't like to do or have to do is go back to the organization and say, well, we can only fund you to X amount. We're, reducing the amount of, the grant is less than what you've requested, but they've already built their budget on that amount. And so sometimes that can be harmful to that budget, especially, right? I think, if, I don't know that right now we're seeing organizations that are seeking, that are using this towards a matching fund from somebody else, but they could be trying to use it towards a match. And so I just wouldn't want anyone to have their hopes up that we would give more than a certain amount.
If it's okay, I would chime in too to say, I really appreciate that point. And the, having background from other organizations, we could put in language that's not prescriptive, but makes suggestions. I think it wouldn't be that hard to craft something that says, we generally intend to cap grants at $2,000, and you could put something in to say this is not to say that, well, I don't know. Like you don't want to discourage people. If 1,500 is what they need, that's what they should ask for. And so
Right.
maybe we could find language that says something to the effect of, we encourage people, because of our limited budget, to ask for the amount that they really anticipate that they'll need, and we'll take factors into consideration in making that determination. And it could be higher, it could be lower.
Yeah,
maybe-
I think I would want language that also indicates like above $2,000, like needs to have like
Exceptional sort of
exceptional rationale. Yeah.
yeah, and if it's yeah, that we just want to see a strong rationale for the amount requested. We operate on a limited budget. And sort of like when you go to the used car dealer, like I always say, this isn't my pretend number, this is my actual number. Like,
Mhm.
just ask for what you really want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kelly, did you? Oh, sorry.
no,
I was gonna say, I would at least remove that language that says requests over 2,000 will be automatically declined.
Okay,
And maybe we can come up with something to replace that, asking for more details for a higher amount or something along those lines, but at least remove the automatic.
Do you have something?
yeah, I was gonna say, I like the train of thought we're on here with the language of like, we have a limited budget. Maybe Scott can workshop some
he
language.
can, yep.
Yeah.
I think this is good feedback. He can put something together for you to review at the next meeting.
And I was gonna agree with that too. I instead of a specific amount, but just kind of we have a limited budget. Maybe also something along the lines of final decision of the dollar amount will be up to the CDA,
Okay,
just so they know that it's not necessarily what they're asking for, but it's this board will decide exactly how much they get,
right.
And
So,
as well as part of the based on your needs.
okay,
Yeah.
And that might kind of cap the, oh, here's the $2,000 limit, I'm just gonna ask for that, but we kind of make it explicit that we have a limited
So
budget.
people know
It's,
that
it's,
they can't just guarantee
Yeah.
the budget.
we're gonna look at what
Yeah.
their needs are and look at in the detail. So that,
And to reinforce Jen's point, then that might help keep people from indexing toward like writing that in as a hard budget line before the grant is awarded too.
yeah,
Very good.
the next question that Scott put out for discussion is, should the grant be reimbursable, require receipts for specific items, or provide upfront funds? We have done grants both ways. Barry always submits his receipts, whether they're required or not.
Nah, thorough.
I think both that question and the next question are kind of on the same theme of just like how in the weeds do we want to get?
Yeah,
I think it would be easier to kind of keep it to a simple, like they get the money up front and then maybe we ask for receipts to just see what money is spent on after. That way it's just kind of more transactional, not, you know, them waiting for the money. Maybe that becomes like a struggle for some of the events to do that. And that's just also more administrative back and forth that currently I don't think we really seem to need.
one option could be, instead of asking for the receipts at all, would be just to have them indicate in their post-event summary how much they spent on each item.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like the idea of, as staff with a very small staff team, not having to review a receipt.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Jen,
Jen, sorry.
Yeah, I have a preference to provide upfront funds. It just helps the small events to be able to pay out expenses right away. And I do agree to not require receipts, but that, you know, the summary, the reporting does share how funds were spent and, you know, and that. But however, I do think we should have a clause, if this is allowable, that any underspending from the grant award would be returned to the city for use with other grants.
yeah.
Does the CDA's budget get rolled over, like if someone returned $500 and it's November, you know, could that be used the following year?
Yes, because we would just put it back into the fund balance amount. So it could be.
Kari, you have your hand up.
Only to concur with what Jen said, I think, and the last idea, I think, promotes accountability. And we're not asking for receipts, but we're asking for people to understand in their own event or program budget how our money is being allocated without it being too burdensome on staff or a small organization for a micro grant. So I like that a lot.
Okay. And then we were wondering if you had any feedback on metrics that should be used for scoring the grants. And Scott was suggesting community impact and expected attendance.
How would you measure community impact? Is there like a proposed metric there or unit? Or is that just kind of a vague way? Yeah, just vibes.
Yeah, I don't know if, I don't think he had a proposal. I'm not sure if he was thinking, like, if the event is, let's say, one of the downtown restaurants is holding an event that is only gonna probably benefit them versus like an event that maybe would be spread out more throughout the downtown. I don't know.
So very much like case by case, just like how they think it'll impact.
Yeah, we
Okay.
should probably put some more of a description around that though, because it's not gonna work as a metric unless it's something that's more easily to be scored.
I could think of things like unmet need, like this hasn't happened before. Pulling in like a new business or organization that needs a little more support. Something that promotes inclusion of, you know, diversity along socioeconomic and other metrics in our community. You know, if like you said, if there are multiple businesses involved, if there's potential for a big bounce from tourism from out of community attendees. Just some things I could think of.
That was pretty good for off the top of your head, Kari.
Yeah.
There are some more on the next page too that he include. I'm assuming those are included as the metrics.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So. But Kari had some good ideas as well.
Jen, go right ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to see something that measures or requires them to explain how the event will aligns with the goals of the CDA or connection to the city's, overall comprehensive or strategic plan, that could just demonstrate how it's connected to furthering since it's city funds, how it's connected to furthering the, vision of the city currently.
I would agree with tying it to the city mission or vision specifically, since those are shorter statements, rather than looking at like the full strategic plan. And if there are sections where we're asking them to write something, like indicating how long their response should be, and maybe keeping it to the brief side, just so they don't have to write too much, or we don't have to read too much.
Yeah, it's a small.
Just
grant
get to the
amount,
point.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it too cumbersome. Okay.
Any other thoughts on these other bullet points?
Okay, well, I will get all these comments over to Scott so that he can make changes, and then we'll bring it back to you next meeting.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, going back to the agenda.
Back to agenda item number 2, request for CDA event sponsorship assistance for $3,000 from the National Mustard Museum for August 2nd, 2025. We deferred this from the last meeting.
I saw that in the minutes.
Yeah. So, now let's discuss. We have $2,500. We have the 2 different requests.
I went back to the minutes from last year, 2024, when the CDA was discussing Mustard Day. And it said that the Mustard Day request was $4,000, and the CDA said CDA members discussed the past practice of providing $2,000 in support for the event, and the CDA approved $2,000. And now this year, the Mustard Day is asking for $3,000. So I think Abby, you mentioned an exception where they received more during the pandemic, but otherwise it sounds like it's been about 2,000.
Yes, that's correct.
So I'm surprised to see the request continuing to increase versus the event becoming more and more self-sufficient. So I'm curious about why the request is increasing, I guess.
Well, should I answer?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I think it was on the basis of maybe the 4,000. So we reduced it to 3,000. 2,000 would be totally acceptable as well. And even though we expect to get even more people here this year than last year because of CBS Sunday Morning, that is running a piece probably in June, but it could be in May. And, that will probably bring out even more people. I think the reason for the deferring was to find out more about the self-sufficiency, and also whether or not the gift shop itself could donate money. And I believe you've all gotten a copy of this, which is from Patty Bridges. And I think what her points are absolutely right on. They are they are absolutely correct. She does give us a lot of effort, a lot of resources, more so than I think we can even count. For example, one of the things, I mean, we work together. We try to work together. And I think that what happened at the last meeting, I think was misunderstood or whatever, in terms of their ability to donate even more. Because number one, I ran Mustard Day when I owned the museum, and it's not a big moneymaker in terms of the gift shop, because of the number of staff she needs. And it's not a big moneymaker at all. But as an example of what the gift shop does for us, a few weeks ago, we had to get out an overnight air delivery, and they didn't pick it up by 5 o'clock. So Patty Bridges called them, even though I was gone, because it had to go out and that day and for overnight delivery. And she waited until, they called back and they said, "Oh, we forgot." And they came back, and it was around 5:30 or so, and they picked it up. That was something that was kind of out of the ordinary. And I think that is an example of what Patty Bridges does for the museum, as well as the fact that staff, all of that is absolutely true. So Mustard Day itself doesn't make a lot of money for the gift shop, because of their expenses before and after. So if there are any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Randall, were you privy to this email?
I don't think I saw
All
that,
right,
no.
we forward that to you.
You want to see a copy of it?
I can, yeah.
Thank you for that, Barry.
And I don't, maybe you can answer this too, because I don't remember. I mean, you charge for brats,
Right.
ice cream that's sold, different things that are sold.
Mhm.
I don't remember how much you charged for that. Is there a chance you could increase prices of do sell out on the street for the Mustard Day?
The hot dogs and the brats. Again, that's really up to the board and the committee, because there's a separate committee that's handling Mustard Day.
Yeah.
And in terms of the ice cream, I think that's pretty well set in terms of what they charge at other events, for
Just to be comparable to.
to be comparable and not to put it out of reach for people. I mean, we don't charge admission for the museum. We don't charge admission to Mustard Day. We're certainly going to get even more people this year. We don't know. We don't count. But, I think they did try and do a count at one point of the museum, where people ran around and counted. I think at that time there were like 3,000, but it's people come, people go. So, we estimate that about 6,000 people probably come to the Mustard Museum from all over Dane County and outside. And we know that a lot of people do book rooms to stay in Middleton for the museum, because we always set aside rooms at various hotels. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I was just thinking of other funding sources too.
Yeah, we don't it's not a moneymaker.
Right.
For sure. You know, we try to help support the nonprofit part. But expenses are always going up.
And yeah, just covering the costs.
It's it's pretty awesome how costs are just going up for everything.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the impact on the city, and I don't know whether anyone here would know this, but I'm thinking, you know, like if someone comes to Mustard Day and they're eating a hot dog there, they're not gonna go eat at another restaurant downtown
Oh,
necessarily.
I think they will.
And if it's not a big moneymaker for the gift shop, which is specifically about mustard, is it something that drives much traffic at other stores?
I think it does. Because they're downtown, and of course, we block off the downtown area. And people are are free to, and often do, go to other stores, because what else is there to do? You know, there's you know, the games, where, you know, they can get a hot dog. A lot of people want more than a hot dog. So, and ice cream. So from what we understand, they do, that other restaurants do get traffic.
And then the other thing that came to mind for me was like Pie Day, which Hubbard Avenue Diner does.
Mhm.
And it's sort of about them and for them. It's not the same because they don't put on entertainment downtown. So
Right.
I understand it's not an equal comparison, but you know, that kind of thing is just, as far as I know, just run by Hubbard.
That's my understanding too. But this, it's people outside. It's also in the summertime when you don't have to worry about weather, as opposed to March 14th. So and from what we understand, people do go to other shops, because what else is there to do? There's mustard, but there's more.
Looking at you guys in the Zoom.
Mm. You know, I joined the CDA a little bit before the pandemic, and I think so much of my or our group's thinking was colored for 3 or 4 years by sort of this dire necessity of keeping the downtown afloat and the downtown businesses afloat. That a lot of our grant making was, we did, you know, more work with the DMBA, and really thought a lot about the commercial activity of the downtown. And I know that a lot of the other projects that we have going on are focused on this, but I'm hearing, as I'm listening and thinking, some questioning of whether our committee's work right now should be focused so directly on strong support of what is essentially the activity or like the event of one organization. And I think like over the last couple of years and over these last 2 meetings, I think that's where kind of the crux of our decision-making difficulty has been. I'm not quite sure where I fall on that, but I just wanted to say that's what I'm hearing.
I appreciate that. I think it's sort of being danced around.
I think on that note, this is kind of unrelated to the request for Mustard Day, but kind of on Kari's thoughts, is just that I think of how we operate with some of these, and it feels very similar to a business improvement district. Kind of businesses coming together to fund things that help improve the area specifically around them. Because a lot of our focus has been around Stonehorse Green in one specific area in the city. and not, other areas of the city that are also, develops rural areas. It feels very hyper-focused to support this specific development, which it is our downtown, but I just think it's interesting because in a way we are functioning to subsidize businesses by subsidizing events to help their business. And I think that kind of goes along with what Kari was saying, that during COVID, that was really essential because it's our downtown. We need it to be thriving. And so I get your kind of like post-COVID thoughts of, well, what is the reason we're still doing that? I think there are events that still they bring the community together. That's the whole point of CDA. But I think along Harry's thoughts of just kind of questioning, are we kind of doing something that, we don't really need to be subsidizing? Not in specific reference to Mustard Day, but just kind of how we've been focused on this one specific area.
We do have a remit that is focused on the downtown, as I understand it, that's statutory, right,
Okay.
Abby? Or not? I always forget.
So the statutory language for the CDA is around workforce housing and redevelopment areas. And
Okay.
we do have a redevelopment area that covers the downtown. It's called Redevelopment District Number 1, and it's basically just focused on the downtown. So I think that the CDA, if they wanted to expand out from the downtown, that would be in addition to the guidance from state statute.
I'm wondering about, Barry, you said that the request is for 3,000, but 2,000 would be totally fine.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, what about 1,000, or what happens if it's 0? Like what
Well, then.
is the impact of
Well,
the,
the impact is we have to come up with more money, obviously. Our expenses are, we spent about 3,000 last year just on entertainment. And then there's also the question of the equipment that we need to operate on as well. So, I mean, certainly the CDA is, is free to either give us anything or nothing. I understand that. And remember, the museum is a nonprofit. So, and there are very few other sources of revenue. I've already sent out 11 in the last week, 11 requests for funding from organizations, companies, foundations, whatever. Some I've already been denied. They say, well, that's not what we want to do. So, but I think we are a draw, and people know about us. And curiously, if you Google large businesses in Mount Horeb, you've got Spectrum Brands, you've got all these, and Mustard Museum is there. Well, we're not a big business. That's kind of ironic that maybe people think of us that way, but we're not. And certainly the nonprofit wing of the museum is not. And I think what Patty Bridges wrote to everyone was that it's exaggerated that she makes a lot of money from this, because she doesn't.
Is anyone ready for a motion on any of this?
I think I would want to hear a little bit more about or maybe I've already heard enough, but just a rehash of the process for tapping our reserves to get a little bit more money, so we could maybe cover, maybe not the full amount of the Mustard Day request, but feel like we're on 2,000, you know, the grant application was 2,000, we've given out 2,000 to the two already, Strolin wants 2,000.
Well, there is maybe an alternative option, but I am not sure if I'm enough up to speed on where we are with all of our line items to know if this is a possibility, but the so absent this option, we would need the CDA to make a recommendation to exceed the budget and set the dollar amount, and then that would get pulled from the reserves. The CDA has just, the last I checked, just under $700,000 in reserve funds. And then that would go to the city council as a budget amendment. However, the other option is that our city administrator has the ability to transfer within line items, but I believe that that's capped at $1,000. And that would be only a viable option if you have 1,000 available in one of the other line items that we wouldn't end up spending otherwise. Then he could,
Oh, I see.
with your recommendation, make that as an internal transfer without having to go to a budget resolution. So I'm trying to think. I don't think you'll have any excess in snow removal because that always ends up being like really expensive. So you have the line for landscaping. That's a possibility. Maybe it would come in under budget. That's, you know, a lot of that work gets done by our Parks and Rec department now. So there's a possibility that that would come in under.
Have we spent anything on snow removal this year? Since we haven't had very much snow.
Well,
And there's,
we pay them when we, if it snows at all, because they take the
They do.
snow off public sidewalks, like in front of the library and city hall. And if it needs to be salted, they do all that too.
and I know there's October and November and December as well.
Yes, yep. Hopefully we won't get any snow, but I bet we will. Here. Share it. It'll be the most friendly document to show on the screen here, but see what I can do. Okay, so this is the operating budget workbook for CDA, and scroll over so you can see line items. Okay, so we took away the 2,000 that we had for the downtown or for the senior center building maintenance. And that was a discussion when we allowed the senior center to enter the Edward Jones space, which was previously a space that the CDA got revenue from. We still have the 75. Oh, I'm sorry. We have 40,000 for downtown snow removal, 7,500 for CDA events, 20,000 for banners and holiday lights, which maybe we would end up having some excess in that line item because the CDA took action last year to remove the banners from University Avenue. So we don't have as much maintenance of the banners blowing down and then having to pay somebody to go put them back up. The holiday lights, though, we have kind of gotten a little bigger with Stone Horse Green. So I'm not 100% sure. We reduced the labor downtown maintenance budget. This is landscaping that our Parks and Rec crew takes care of. So this is maybe one that we would have some excess in. You can see last year, I don't have the total amount, I could look it up if you want, but from this budget book, by mid last year, we'd only spent $3,000. So that one could be one we might be able to pull 1,000 from. We have this downtown landscape and maintenance, which we increased because our contract for cleaning the restrooms at Stonehorse Green and some of the other maintenance items went up. And then the rest is related to salaries, so that wouldn't be flexible. Just want to go down. Anything else? No. So yeah, if we were gonna be able to draw, it would probably be from that labor downtown maintenance budget. I could pull up Cassell and see where we're at right now, if that's a conversation you all want to entertain. I don't know how much of this you want to do on the fly here, so bear with me. Our software is slow to open. Oh. Right, so let me see if I can share this. I think we might be in good shape to do this. Because it looks like we've only so far. Let's look at detail. I believe this year in this line item, we've only spent about $1,200. So, granted, like this is landscaping, so it will ramp up a little bit in the summer months when we have Bruce Company mowing for us and planting and, you know, out at Stonehorse Green. But I think given that we've only spent $1,200, that would be an option if you wanted.
What was the total line?
The total amount is 20,000 and that was reduced. It was previously 27,000, but because we realized we weren't spending the whole amount, the CDA reduced that last year or in this year's. Oops. Sorry, it's my reminder to FaceTime my nephew.
And our actual from the year prior was only around like $3,000.
That was midway through the year, so we could look that up right now.
But we can't move any more than 1,000 anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Is that just 1,000 from one line or just adding 1,000 total to one line?
that's, you're able to total move 1,000 from one line to another line, I think.
Well, just to kind of move the mustard day question forward, I think personally I would be a no on the 3,000. But I'm not sure. I guess I'm not sure about another amount. So I'd be curious to know if others have thoughts on that.
I would recommend the 2,000, given that's what we've historically stuck to, and that is similar to other grants we've given out.
That will leave us with 1,500 for the next agenda item.
That would leave us with 500, I think.
Excuse me, 500, but if we move the $1,000.
Oh, gotcha.
I think my train of thought is that we would do the 2,000 for Mustard Day and then maybe put off strolling until our next meeting. And Abby could prepare how we could move money. We could consider the 1,000. I mean, we've kind of already considered it, but maybe think about it for longer. And then maybe we could also do that and also the reserve, but for a lesser amount, for just 500, if we want to give them the requested 2,000.
Yeah, and I could also check with our city administrator to see if that, because I know it was $1,000 like the last time that I asked him, but I feel like I thought he was gonna take something to the council to slightly increase that transfer amount, but I don't remember if that.
I was looking at emails. I don't know what to search under when we did that.
Yeah,
See what he had.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, because I feel like there was a change that he was proposing, but I don't know if it's been approved
I
yet.
don't know. I think it was just that one, the initial request to allow the administrator to move.
Oh,
things.
okay,
I think that's the only thing the council has seen.
okay. Yeah, and I could also dig more details about like where I think we're gonna end up with our budget. I could prepare that too. Maybe get a financial report from our accountant. So I think that would be fine because Strollin's not happening until September.
And we don't expect other requests, at least based on previous years.
We don't. I mean, that doesn't mean something wouldn't come forward that's brand new, but there's nothing else that I'm aware of.
Did you make a motion?
I can. I would motion we award National Mustard Day $2,000 for our CDA event sponsorship.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion about this? Right, hearing none. All in favor of $2,000 for National Mustard Day, National Mustard Museum for August 2nd, 2025, signify by saying aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back.
Sorry, it was so hot in this room.
Yeah.
Gee, I didn't notice,
All
but I'm always cold.
All right, well, then it was perfect for you.
That's right.
Have a good night. Thank
You
you.
too.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
On to number 3, request for CDA event sponsorship assistance for $2,000 for Strollin Middleton, Stonehorse Green, and additional downtown Middleton venues, September 5th and 6th, 2025. Do we have a motion or?
I can motion to table until our next meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of deferring this item until our next meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. On to item number 4, update on Affordable Housing Action Plan subcommittees, including dates for the May meeting kickoff.
We have now set dates. We have Monday, May 12th at 5 p.m. The Housing Education and Outreach Subcommittee will be holding a meeting. And Daphne Shu in our department put together the public notice for that meeting. It's only on Zoom. And we will record it and we'll also post it online after the fact. So if you want to, if you're on the subcommittee, we recommend you come to the meeting, but if you are not on the subcommittee, and you can come to the meeting still, or if you just want to catch up on what's going on, you can feel free to watch the video.
Which subcommittee is this again?
This is the education and outreach. Monday at 5, Monday, May 12th. And then on Tuesday, May 13th at 4 p.m., the strategy and finance subcommittee is going to be meeting. Same drill for that one. We are hoping at those meetings that we will be able to set a regular meeting date. And ideally it would just stick with kind of what we've already worked out. So the second Monday and the second Tuesday of each month, just on a regular schedule, because we don't want to have to doodle poll everybody for every meeting. It takes a lot of time. And the only other update I have on this is that Daphne and I had a meeting today with Way Forward Resources, just to learn a little bit more about what they're doing around housing. They're primarily involved with tenant support. So if somebody is moving into a new affordable housing unit in Middleton, a lot of times Way Forward will provide support for moving costs or the security deposit that's required to rent a new place. They also do some work around eviction prevention. As the city builds more affordable housing, they do see more requests for services, and they are struggling a lot right now just with their funding, because primarily they are funded through private donations from individuals in the community. I think she said 52% of their donations come from individuals. And then the next big chunk of funds that they receive is from corporate sponsors, mostly Middleton businesses. And I think it would be good for if the CDA and also the Workforce Housing Committee has not had a chance to go to Way Forward and tour their facility and just see what they do. They have their food pantry out there, and they also have their clothing closet. They offer a lot of different types of support to members of the community. And so Daphne and I were thinking that maybe it would be fun to actually hold a Workforce Housing Committee meeting there and then invite CDA members. And we could also invite city council members and notice it as a public meeting. And so Ellen Carlson, the executive director of Way Forward, took us to a space and showed us, like, if we were to hold a meeting, they would have, I think that they would have enough room. We'd probably have to pull some folding tables and things like that. So if that seems like something that would be of interest, it probably would happen as a regular meeting of the Workforce Housing Committee, but we would invite the CDA to attend and notice that there could be a quorum of CDA members present.
I'm interested.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
sounds interesting. Okay. Everybody on Zoom, okay with that idea? Great,
Cool.
thumbs up. Great.
Sounds good. So that is all I have on that.
Anybody have any other comments on this item? That is the agenda items for tonight. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks so much for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Write it off a
Sorry,
couple
and
pounds.
to come in person, it's like 85 degrees in this
Yeah.
room.
It's pretty hot, yeah.
It's like a spa, like we're gonna treat it like a spa.
Positive thinking.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.